Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 230, Fear of Failing. I don't know about you, but my inbox and social media feeds have been overflowing with "halfway through the year, what have you achieved?" type messages. And this can be triggering, serving to highlight our frustrations when actually we've had to deal with life events and other things that consume our time. The "what have you achieved" type subject lines can invite the inner and the outer critics to a party that you never knew you needed to host. And the good news is that you don't, which is such a relief given how we have to be in the right frame of mind for a party, and when we're hosting, it's so much more difficult to get people and the critics to leave. So in this episode, I'm offering a bit of an antidote, an alternative perspective, and an opportunity to set things up differently for the remainder of the year. And maybe for your life, but that's your choice. And rather than giving you a one-size-fits-all solution to the fear of failing, I promise that the antidote will reduce the sense of failure. So many of us are encouraged to set new goals at the start of the calendar year. Many call them resolutions, but research shows that most of these resolutions are broken before the month of January is out. What does that tell us? Well, here's what it tells me from my own and from my clients' experiences. Either our heart wasn't in the goal in the first place, and often this is because I'm doing what I think I ought to do, or it wasn't aligned in some way. Actually, I've never been a fan of goals, as you might have already gathered from other episodes, and this probably stems back to my career as an engineer, a project manager and a management trainer whilst still at BT. For pretty much the whole time there, 19 years in all, my goals typically lacked substance, relevance and my input. And worst of all with these imposed goals is that they were not entirely within my control. And that's just nuts. They were supposed to be my goals. So what right did anyone else have dictating them to me? It really made no sense. Any of you working in corporates may know what I mean, especially if your performance management is in any way a tick box exercise. Fortunately, many organisations and managers are more informed and aware these days. But I know there are still far too many out there that set a team member's goals for them. And when goals are imposed or set for you, where is the motivational piece? We talked about motivation during the last episode. We're told that goals are meant to be specific and stretching, motivational and measurable, but I'm the one who knows what motivates me, and some things are really hard to measure. The whole focus on goals stuff has bothered me for as long as I can remember, and so I knew I needed a different approach. And what I discovered turned out to be a pivotal point in my life. If that sounds dramatic, it kinda was, and I'm not going to downplay it now. I came across an article about why intentions work better than goals or resolutions, and as you can imagine, my interest was piqued. It stated that goals can leave you feeling empty inside, something that Harvard positive psychology professor Tal Ben-Shahar coined as the arrival fallacy. Interesting. Goal setting sets up the illusion that once we have reached said goal, we'll be happy, fulfilled, satisfied in some way. But what about if we fail? If the goal was not aligned or meaningful? That can lead to a sense of feeling like a failure rather than having missed a goal. Because we often attach self-worth to goal achievement. The actual fact is that we just didn't achieve the goal. And when you're in an organisation, and depending on circumstances, that can lead to demotion, loss of pay, and worse. It really depends on how the individual and their manager handle the situation. And we all know the achievement of one goal sets the immediate expectation of, great, now what's next? There's often scant recognition or time to appreciate the achievement. Now, that works for some, but not this being. And there it is. For me, this needs to be about who I'm being, not what I'm achieving. If you think back to the motivation episode, there was some evidence that external outcome-driven goals don't carry the same appeal for many of we introverts. So when I read that, and I quote, "Intention setting is an inward-driven approach that begins with what do I want my purpose to be this year?" When I read that, things really started to fall into place for me. An intention is a guiding principle for who you want to be and how you want to act, live, and show up in this world. It's a guiding principle, our compass, our North Star. And it's for all areas of our life, not just work. This creates the type of alignment that is important to me. I think I've shared before that my business principles, the things that guide me, are unwavering advocacy, purposefully curious, supportively challenging, resolutely pragmatic, and quietly gutsy. And guess what? They reflect who I am as a wife, a stepmother, a step-grandmother, a friend, a member of society, a business owner, a mentor, a coach, and a trainer. So, my life as a whole. I notice that I feel concerned when delegates on my courses say that they are one person at work and entirely another at home. This incongruence can seriously mess with our sense of self. This cognitive dissonance is where our actions don't align with our true self, and the feelings of discomfort and inner conflict impact us psychologically, socially, and professionally. So it's too big a load to carry to be one person in your personal life and someone altogether different in the workplace. And maybe that's the topic of another episode. And it's why diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging matter so much. No one should have to pretend. Now, for clarity, I'm not saying that we never need those future-focused goals, but for us as introverts, it usually works better to start from a place of intention. These intentions can vary from one word to a few words. And many of my clients, frustrated by being overlooked and undervalued, have a few choice words that they've been holding back. I won't share them here, but I'm sure you can imagine. Those clients tend to find me when the level of frustration they've reached is causing resentment, disengagement, and unhappiness, again across their whole life. The golden thread that links all of my clients is that they know they have more to offer, but they're frustrated and don't always know where to start. Some of my clients had had enough of being overlooked, and the intention they start with is of being appropriately visible. If we were to start with just be visible, that can be too harsh at the beginning of their journey, especially as we've usually avoided the spotlight. But guess what? We need to be noticed, but for the right reasons if we're looking to take on our next big role. And the goals that support this intention are baby steps to start with. One of my clients, Andrea, set her intention to be heard when it matters. Again, not just heard. Intentions like these stop us from falling into the pretend to be more of an extrovert trap. So instead, we set something that is purposeful, manageable, and relevant. I said we still benefit from goals that support our intentions, and the goals that Andrea set when we worked together included things like, ask for the agenda of the monthly managers meeting 3 days before the event. Andrea appreciated that she can't control if she's actually heard, but she can set herself up to succeed by knowing what's on the agenda in advance so that she could consider what her input would be. We know with our think, say, think communication process, we don't always get our ideas out fast enough in meetings, so that preparation is essential. That goal was within Andrea's control, and we then explored suitable measures for her goals, and she quickly noticed a difference in the way her contributions were received. So we dramatically reduced the fear of failing by starting with a meaningful intention and then creating pragmatic goals that are within our control. When you join the Frustrated to Flourishing program, that's where we start. Intentions, and then we plan your relevant, actionable, motivational goals step by step. My intention for 2024 is rise. Just that simple, single word, rise. And yet, like my principles, it shapes everything I'm doing and helps me to prioritise on a daily basis. I create monthly goals that specify what I will do to rise that month. It also helps me to rise above the haters and the critics, including my own inner critic, Gladys. Having that intention helps me to model how we can show up as introverts with dignity, with our heads held high and our shoulders back. Playing small is like knocking back the rise of bread dough. It's okay sometimes in order to get a better end result, but only with purpose. And so it is with us. My intention to rise challenges me to overcome obstacles and look for the learning when I do fail. Because failing is not the end of the world. It doesn't mean I'm worth less. I just need to reflect, regroup, and restart. Tomorrow, after all, is a new day. So rather than feeling frustrated that you haven't achieved what you hoped in the first half of 2024, reflect on what you've learned, regroup and restart so you feel more fulfilled by the end of the year. And only you can determine what that will look like. And if you want support, challenge and a guide for that next stage of your journey, you know where I am. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.